In the world of aura, survival depends not on being empathetic but on mastering the appearance of empathy. When you look at this single line, it condenses the entire structure of a modern parable into a principle that echoes through centuries of political thought, psychology, and the strategies of social survival. To stretch it into its full body, we must unpack what it means to live in a system where appearances, not inner truth, determine worth. This is not only the essence of Machiavelli's enduring insight, but also a mirror of how technology in our own world increasingly dictates the terms by which humans interact, thrive, or perish socially. If empathy is turned into a measurable currency, then the line between sincerity and performance dissolves, leaving behind a stage where the actors must rehearse every gesture for an audience that cannot distinguish between genuine emotion and carefully calculated simulation. The keynote that survival depends not on being empathetic, but on appearing empathetic is a signal that we are dealing with a universe where optics become more valuable than substance, and where every smile, every pause, every tear has less to do with authenticity and more to do with aligning oneself with the metrics of power that the algorithm recognizes and rewards. Imagine the architecture of aura. Its interface flashes a score like a digital halo, and this halo travels with the user wherever they go. Friends, colleagues, strangers, even lovers, all can see it. The score is both judgment and lure, praise and punishment, carrot and stick. In such a world, the individual no longer thinks, "Am I connecting?" but rather, "Do I look like I am connecting in a way that aura's system can register?" Here lies the Machiavellian crux. The truth of one's empathy is irrelevant because there is no authority capable of peering into the soul. All that matters is the perception engineered by behavior. This echoes Machiavelli's instruction to princes. You need not actually be merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, or religious. You must only appear so. The same principle that once applied to rulers now applies to every user of this app, for aura has democratized the theater of power. Every citizen is now both ruler and ruled, both manipulator and manipulated, bound by the same performance code. The app's genius and its cruelty is in how it convinces people that they are chasing virtue when in fact they are only chasing signals, simulations of virtue that can be displayed, shared, and ranked. The young woman at the heart of this story embodies the drama of this keynote. Her plummeting empathy score is more than a number. It is a social death sentence. Friends drift away, invitations stop arriving, employers glance with suspicion, potential partners swipe left. Her identity and her worth are mediated entirely by the score. This forces her into a Machiavellian dilemma. Does she cling to her authentic self, which cannot register within the logic of aura, or does she refashion herself into the creature the app demands, sacrificing inner truth for public survival? Machiavelli would recognize this instantly as the choice between ruin and rule. A leader who insists on sincerity in a treacherous court is doomed, but one who adapts, who bends appearances toward advantage, thrives. The app has transformed her into a prince without a throne, compelled to master deception as the only path to reclaiming her place in society. The keynote warns us that survival here hinges on appearances, and appearances are never innocent. They are a performance space, and like all theaters, they are governed by scripts. In aura's case, the script is written by a hidden algorithm, invisible yet absolute, rewarding certain behaviors it interprets as empathetic. But what if these behaviors are not empathy at all, but subtle manipulations? Perhaps the app favors listening without interrupting, but only when accompanied by nods at precise intervals. Perhaps it rewards mirroring body language, strategic pauses before responding, or the production of tears during emotionally charged moments. Users will not care if these acts are genuine. They will only care if they elevate the score. Thus, empathy itself becomes emptied of meaning, replaced by a set of tactical moves recognizable by the system. It is no longer a human exchange of feeling, but a chess match against an algorithm that sets the rules of credibility. This keynote line also reveals the violence hidden beneath the app's glossy surface. To say survival depends not on being empathetic but on appearing empathetic implies that authenticity is punished, not merely ignored. If someone expresses true feelings in ways that the system cannot register or approve, their score plummets. If they refuse to play the game, they are marked as socially deficient. In this sense, aura enforces conformity through fear, exactly as Machiavelli argued rulers must sometimes do. A prince must be feared enough to ensure obedience but not so much as to inspire hatred. Aura applies this principle with mathematical precision. It does not need to jail or kill dissenters, only to lower their scores until society ostracizes them. Power is maintained not through violence but through engineered consensus about what counts as virtue. The line also speaks to the collapse of private life. In a world where empathy is performed for constant measurement, there is no longer a boundary between the inner and the outer self. The public self becomes the only self that matters. This is perhaps the darkest Machiavellian twist. Individuals are not merely deceiving others but ultimately deceiving themselves, internalizing the logic of aura until they can no longer distinguish between their true feelings and their strategic performances. The protagonist's struggle dramatizes this perfectly. At first she resists, insisting on her own authenticity, but as her isolation deepens, she begins to rehearse behaviors, experiment with performances, and eventually blur the line between acting empathetic and being empathetic. Here Machiavelli's counsel meets psychological reality. Humans become what they pretend to be, not because they change inwardly, but because the world only rewards the mask. In time, the mask and the face fuse. The keynote's stress on appearance also signals the transformation of morality into spectacle. Just as Machiavelli saw that rulers are judged not by their intentions but by their results, so too aura users are judged not by their hearts, but by their visible behaviors. This creates a society where the moral worth of a person is no longer determined by conscience, but by optics. Imagine a friend who listens to your sorrow but does not score highly because they are awkward, or another who fakes sympathy with exaggerated gestures and is rewarded with applause. Which of them is considered good in this society? Not the sincere one, but the skilled performer. The app has replaced ethics with theater, and morality becomes a leaderboard. This is the full Machiavellianization of everyday life. The keynote also underlines the political implications of aura. By rewarding appearances of empathy, the app does not merely influence individual behavior, it reshapes entire cultural values. A society addicted to scores will redefine empathy, not as deep connection but as quantifiable performance. Leaders, celebrities, and influencers will master the system, turning their glowing scores into proof of credibility. The masses will follow suit, eager to emulate those at the top. Over time, genuine empathy will be dismissed as inefficient, even naive, while strategic manipulation will be praised as sophistication. This is exactly how Machiavelli described the fate of republics and principalities. Values are not eternal but bend to the necessities of power. Aura, like a digital prince, dictates necessity, and society obeys. At its deepest level, the keynote forces us to confront a paradox. If everyone is performing empathy for survival, does it matter that it is not genuine? If the result is that people smile more, listen more, cry more, and comfort more, even if calculated, doesn't the world look superficially kinder? Machiavelli would shrug and say, yes, appearances are what matter. But the protagonist's crisis exposes the cost, the hollowing out of sincerity, the loss of self, the replacement of authenticity with ceaseless calculation. To live in such a world is to never be sure whether one is loved or merely useful for someone else's score. It is to wonder whether every hug, every word of comfort, every tear shed is real, or just another tactic in the endless game of appearances. The keynote reminds us that survival in this realm is never about who we are, but about how convincingly we can appear to be what others expect. This is why the single line, in the world of aura, survival depends not on being empathetic, but on mastering the appearance of empathy, is not just a summary but a warning. It encapsulates a world where the distinction between reality and performance collapses, where power is exercised not by those who feel most deeply, but by those who manipulate perception most skillfully. It is a world where Machiavelli's advice to princes becomes the daily reality of ordinary people, where every interaction is a calculated move on a stage illuminated not by candlelight, but by the glow of an algorithmic scoreboard. It is not simply a story about a young woman and her score, but about the fate of humanity when technology learns to monetize not only our time and attention, but also our very capacity for compassion, reducing the most intimate of human qualities to metrics of power and survival.